The stage floor was a cold, unforgiving mirror, reflecting the sweat that pearled on Isabella Reed's skin. Every muscle in her body screamed a silent protest, a symphony of aches that had become her only true companions. She was the prima, the golden girl of the Metropolitan ballet, yet she felt like a ghost haunting her own life. To the world, she was perfection, a delicate bird caught in a perpetual leap. To herself, she was a fraying rope, stretched between the demands of the director, Julian, and the quiet, domestic pull of Elias. Julian saw her as an instrument, a vessel for his twisted, avant-garde visions. Elias saw her as a woman, one who deserved a life without the constant scent of rosin and ibuprofen. The tension was a living thing, a shadow that trailed her from the bar to the bedroom, whispering that she could never truly have both. Isabella's relationship with Elias was a soft sanctuary, or so she told herself. He was a photographer, a man who captured stillness while she lived in constant motion. He never complained about the late rehearsals or the missed dinners, yet his silence was becoming heavy. It was a subtle weight, a psychological pressure that suggested she was choosing the stage over their future. "You're fading, Bella," he told her one night, his thumb tracing the sharp line of her collarbone. "There's less of you every time you come home." He wanted her to quit, to move to the countryside where they could breathe. But the stage was her lungs. Julian, meanwhile, stoked the fire. He told her she was the only one capable of the lead in The Shattered Glass, a role that demanded total psychological disintegration. He hinted that Elias was a distraction, a parasite draining her artistic soul. The rehearsals for The Shattered Glass became a descent into madness. Julian pushed Isabella until her toes bled through her pointe shoes, his voice a velvet whip. "Elias doesn't understand the sacrifice," Julian would whisper during the breaks, his hand lingering just a second too long on her waist. "He wants to dim your light so he can feel brighter." Isabella began to notice small things, Elias looking at her with a pity that felt like a betrayal. He started, forgetting, to wake her up for morning classes, his excuses polished and kind. "You look so tired, darling," he'd say, but Isabella saw it as an attempt to sabotage her career. The psychological warfare was silent. Every time she chose the studio, she felt she was stabbing Elias. Every time she chose Elias, she felt she was failing her destiny. She was a woman divided, a heart split by two different kinds of love. Then came the letters. Anonymous, tucked into her dance bag, they detailed Julian's history of breaking dancers, physically and mentally. They warned her that he was using her to secure his own legacy, and that once she was broken, he would discard her for the next rising star. Isabella suspected Elias. Who else would want to poison her mind against the man who gave her everything? She confronted him, but he only looked at her with those soulful, wounded eyes. "I just want you to be whole, Bella," he cried. The betrayal felt like a slow-acting toxin. She couldn't trust the man she shared a bed with, and she couldn't trust the man who shaped her art. She felt isolated, a prisoner of her own ambition. She poured that agony into the dance, her movements becoming jagged, frantic, and terrifyingly beautiful. She was the shattered glass she was portraying. A week before the premiere, Isabella found a folder in Elias's darkroom. It was filled with candid photos of her, not the beautiful, staged shots he showed her, but images of her in pain. Bruised shins, weeping over a broken nail, sleeping in a chair from exhaustion. Beside him were brochures for quiet cottages in Vermont and a plane ticket in her name, dated for the morning after the premiere. He wasn't just hoping she'd quit, he was planning her exit without her consent. He was trying to kidnap her soul under the guise of saving it. The betrayal was absolute. She felt a cold, hard resolve settle in her chest. She would perform, she would win, and then she would leave them both. Julian was a predator, but Elias was a jailer. She went to rehearsal with a new, lethal grace. Julian noticed the change. "You've finally let go of him," he smirked. "Now you belong to the art." The night of the premiere, the atmosphere in the dressing room was thick with the scent of hairspray and nerves. Isabella looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were hollow, her frame skeletal. Julian came in, pressing a small vial into her hand. "For the nerves," he said. "It will make the final act transcendent." She looked at the liquid, then at him. Was he trying to drug her? To ensure her disintegration was real for the audience? She tucked it away, her mind racing. She went onto the stage, the lights blinding her. The first act was a blur of technical perfection. In the wings, she saw Elias watching from the shadows, his face a mask of sorrow. He looked like a man mourning a death. She realized then that they were both vultures, waiting for her to fall so they could claim the pieces. She danced with a fury that left the audience breathless. During the intermission, Isabella retreated to the private balcony overlooking the city. She needed air, away from the stifling expectations of the two men who claimed to love her. She felt the vial in her pocket. She thought about the ticket in Elias's room. They both wanted to control her narrative. Julian wanted her to be a tragic masterpiece, Elias wanted her to be a domesticated ghost. Neither wanted Isabella Reed, the person. She looked down at the street below, the cars moving like toy lights. A sudden, sharp realization hit her: she had been the one betraying herself all along. She had allowed their definitions of her to become her reality. She walked back inside, her heart a cold stone. The second act began. This was the moment of the shattering. The choreography required her to dance amidst literal shards of safety glass, a metaphor for a mind breaking apart. As she spun through the glass, the music reaching a dissonant crescendo, Isabella saw Julian and Elias standing together in the wings. They weren't arguing. They were talking, quietly, urgently. Julian handed Elias a set of keys. Elias nodded, a look of grim determination on his face. The world tilted. Were they working together? Was the rivalry a lie? The thought sent a jolt of adrenaline through her. She pushed her body beyond its limits, her leaps defying gravity. She wasn't dancing for them anymore. She was dancing to escape them. The final sequence required her to fall, a dramatic collapse that signaled the character's end. As she descended toward the floor, she saw Elias move toward the stage door, and Julian signal the curtain. She hit the floor, the breath leaving her lungs, the applause erupting like a tidal wave. It was over. She had reached the pinnacle. Isabella didn't go to the after-party. She didn't wait for Elias to take her home or for Julian to praise her. She slipped out the back, still in her stage makeup, her coat thrown over her costume. She took a taxi to the airport, intending to use the ticket Elias had bought, but not to Vermont. She would go anywhere else. However, as she reached for her passport in her bag, she found a note she hadn't seen before. It was in her own handwriting, but she didn't remember writing it. The performance is the only thing that's real. Everything else is a stagehand's lie. She froze. She looked at her hands, they were trembling. She opened her phone and scrolled through her photos. There were no pictures of Elias. None. She checked her call logs. No calls to anyone named Elias. She checked her bank statements. She lived alone in a studio apartment paid for by the Metropolitan Ballet. The twist was a cold blade in her gut. There was no Elias. There was no photographer boyfriend trying to save her, no cottage in Vermont, no plane ticket she hadn't bought herself. Elias was a manifestation of her own desire for escape, a psychological phantom she created to balance the crushing weight of Julian's ambition. She had been hallucinating the love to survive the art. And Julian? She looked up to see him standing at the terminal gate, watching her with a sad, knowing smile. He wasn't a predator, he was her doctor. The ballet was a high-end psychiatric facility where the patients were encouraged to perform their traumas to heal. The Metropolitan was a wing of the hospital. She wasn't a prima ballerina, she was a woman who had broken years ago, dancing in a silent room, believing the world was watching her fall. She wasn't caught between love and ambition, she was caught between reality and a beautiful, dancing lie.